Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on the Fantasy Football Fix YouTube channel. In this video, I will be going through my top transfer targets ahead of Game Week 13. If you're enjoying the content here on this channel, please do remember to like, comment and subscribe. But without further ado, let's get into today's video. So the first comparison this week is between Cornet and Gallagher. Now, we actually did this direct comparison around 3 or 4 game weeks ago now, and I identified that Cornet and Gallagher could be the best two budget price midfielders over the coming weeks. And as we have a really good track record on this series and on this channel, they've performed really well over the last few weeks, and people are still bringing them in the masses. I think they're both in the top 5 most transferred in midfielders for this week. Conor Gallagher in particular has had quite a few transfers in, and Cornet's been ticking along nicely as well. And because they're around the same price now, with Gallagher getting so many price rises, I just wanted to do another quick comparison between them and let you guys know, is there a clear favourite? And if so, you can look to bring in that player in particular. I know a lot of you guys will own Conor Gallagher already, and if you do, that's absolutely fantastic, but it'll be interesting to see here how he compares to Cornet at that price as well. So if we take a look at the fixtures, I would say that they're fairly similar for the two if you take them as a 6, but I would say that Burnley and Cornet have got a couple more difficult fixtures in there, whereas most of Gallagher's and Crystal Palace's are quite nice. Cornet, I would say that the next two aren't particularly easy fixtures in Tottenham and Wolves, but we saw Tottenham really struggled against Leeds. They did end up getting the win, but that did not look good for them, and Leeds could have scored quite a few more goals in that game. So if Burnley turn up, and they have been scoring quite a few goals recently, if they do turn up, that could still be a decent game for Cornet. Wolves is probably the toughest fixture of the 6 there for Burnley. Wolves have actually been defending very well. They're in the top 5 for expected goals conceded this season, so they're performing really well. So that's not an easy fixture. But after that, Newcastle's not bad. West Ham is a bit hit and miss. Sometimes they're really good at the back, sometimes not. Watford's a great fixture, and Villa as well. So as a 6, I do really like that. But I suppose you could potentially hold off a couple of weeks and look to bring him in around game week 15. Gallagher's are a lot nicer with Villa and Leeds in the next 2. Man United, unless Carrick suddenly gets something out of this Man United team, or if Pochettino does indeed end up taking over, then it could be a different story. But at the moment, the current Manchester United team, that is not a red fixture by any means. I'd actually say that's a pretty good fixture to target, if anything. And then Everton, Southampton, Watford. So fixtures-wise, I just about lean towards Conor Gallagher, but I like, as a set of 6, I like both of these two players' fixtures. If we take a look at the stats, it is a little bit more one-sided, and this will start to lean towards me having a pretty strong opinion on which of the two I would end up going for. Total minutes played, of course, just remember this when you're looking at them. Cornet's not played anywhere near as many minutes as Conor Gallagher. And interestingly, that's not only just because he joined late. He doesn't ever play 90 minutes. He comes off sometimes around the 60th, 70th minute. Even if he ends up playing most of the minutes, he's still coming off around the 85th minute. So he doesn't tend to see out 90 minutes. So these statistics are assuming he plays 90 minutes. And as you can see, even if he plays 90 minutes, they're still not as good as Gallagher's. If you then take into account the fact that he might only play 60 or 70, they potentially look even worse for him. Projected points-wise, the fix algorithm does have Conor Gallagher coming out on top, as you would expect if the underlying statistics are better. Expected FPL points, there isn't a massive difference between the two, but it is almost an extra point per 90 for Conor Gallagher, which ends up being around 38 points, of course, across the season. So that does end up stacking up a little bit, especially for these mid-priced midfielders. Non-penalty expected goals and expected assists combined, so expected goal involvement, is where you can really tell the difference between the two. It's only 0.35 for Cornet. And Cornet is currently overperforming his XG by the most in the Premier League at the moment. So he's either finishing incredibly well, which he is if you watch his goals, but he also might be getting a little bit lucky with a couple of these finishes. And these stats suggest that he won't be able to maintain that crazy level of goal scoring form and assist form as well. So I would potentially expect to see either Cornet's underlying data needs to improve, or I would expect his returns to potentially dry up a little bit over the coming weeks. Whereas Conor Gallagher's is around 0.59. So earlier on in the season, it was even higher. It then dropped off slightly around sort of game week 7, game week 8, and then he's picked it up again. And it looks like he's going to be able to maintain this expected goal involvement of around 0.5, 0.6 across the season, which is really impressive. I would say that with Milivojevic on the pitch, he does potentially share corners and free kicks. He has taken them sometimes, Milivojevic on the pitch, but sometimes not. So I would keep an eye on that, because that obviously reduces his creativity, at least his expected assist slightly. So I would keep an eye on that. But as you can see by the touch maps, he does take a lot of corners, takes a lot of set pieces. Big chances, they're actually fairly similar. Neither of them are getting that many big chances, but once again, Gallagher does slightly come out on top. But I would say that the positioning of Cornet is slightly better. He does play in a slightly more advanced role than Gallagher. But by the touch, as you can see by the touch maps, Gallagher does still really get forward from that number 8 position. And touches in the box is probably the most disappointing statistic for the two of them. I'm not very impressed by 3.19 or 3.48. Really want sort of 4, 5, pushing 6 touches in the box. If you think someone like Salah gets almost 10 touches in the box per 90, you can see that these statistics aren't great for either of them. So I would say that Gallagher is definitely, based on the underlying statistics, definitely the one to go for. Fixtures-wise, pretty comparable, I would say. Cornet's fixtures over the 6 are good, but the next 2 aren't the best. So I guess if you're going for someone this week, I would prefer Gallagher because I really like Villa and then Leeds. If you're just looking for a long-term hold, I do like both of them, but if I'm doing my job as a content creator and advising you on the sensible decision, looking at these underlying statistics, Conor Gallagher is the one to own. Let me know down below, do I own either of these already? If not, are you looking to bring either of them in? I do still like the punt on Cornet. I'm just letting you know that it's not massively backed up by statistics, and these statistics would suggest that even though he's been in really good goal-scoring form, that might not necessarily continue. So we're skipping up a little bit in price here. Now, going from Conor Gallagher and Cornet to Bernardo Silva and Diogo Jota. I know a lot of people have around this sort of price, and they're looking for those midfielders with really high upside, but aren't quite as expensive as the likes of Hwang Son and Sadio Mane. It's worth noting that I think if I had my choice again, I obviously went for Son last week. If you follow my channel and you follow me on social media, I went for Son for game week 12. And I think looking back at it, I almost wish I'd have tried to get a little bit of extra money and get Mane in, because his underlying stats are really, really good. So if you're looking for a slightly more expensive midfielder, and you have the money to go for one of those premiums, I really like the idea of Mane coming up, at least till AFCON, obviously, and then you can switch to someone like Jota, or you can switch to like a Bruno Fernandes, etc. But at the moment, we're going to compare Bernardo Silva and Diogo Jota. It is worth noting that Phil Foden's underlying stats are slightly better than Bernardo Silva's. So if you've got the money and you don't own Foden already, you might want to go for Foden over Bernardo Silva. But I just thought I'd talk about Silva because I've not mentioned him on my channel really at all this year, and I know a lot of content creators haven't as well. And I think we get into the frame of mind of thinking too much about past seasons. And in the past, Bernardo Silva has not been an FPL asset. He doesn't get into the box enough. He hasn't got great goal threat. His underlying stats are normally average at best, and there are often a lot of players that perform better than him. And he's been quite pricey in past seasons as well, and there have been a lot of other players that are better value, such as the likes of a Gallagher. But this season, there has been a change in Bernardo Silva, so it's definitely worth considering him, and I like to sort of change my frame of thinking and not think too much in the past. So obviously £0.3 million cheaper than Diogo Jota, so that might come into play if you can't quite afford him, or you can do a lot with that extra 0.3. We're all trying to stretch our budget as much as possible at the moment. But fixtures-wise, pretty similar to the other two, Cornet and Gallagher, in that I think they're pretty comparable between Man City and Liverpool. City's fixtures coming up: West Ham, Villa, Watford, Wolves, Leeds, Newcastle. I don't think there are any there that really strike me as being really difficult fixtures. We said in the past section, Wolves isn't an easy fixture, but for Man City, I think it's a slightly different ball game than for Burnley, of course. So I wouldn't look at any of those and think that City will struggle to score in them. And pretty much the same for Liverpool, I guess, because Wolves is the only one there with a dark colour, that red colour, based on the Fantasy Football Fix algorithm. And then Tottenham as well. Tottenham isn't a really difficult fixture at all, even though that is away. And Wolves, again, for Liverpool, that isn't a difficult fixture. Liverpool are the best attack in the league by some distance, and that has to be taken into account. And City are the second best attack in the league, potentially third after Chelsea. So you've got two players playing for the two best attacking teams in the league here. So fixtures are important, of course they are, but they're less important than with the likes of a Burnley or a Crystal Palace attacker. So overall, I would say I'd just about prefer City's fixtures, but Liverpool's fixtures are very good as well. What I would say as well for Bernardo Silva is that the fixtures continue after that until around game week 25. City have really, really nice fixtures. So you could potentially hold Bernardo Silva until around game week 25. And that's, I think, beginning of February. So he could be a long-term hold. If you're looking to just get someone in at that mid-price, hold him through the tough fixtures, you know he'll play a lot of minutes. He's fairly nailed in that team. Could be a great option. Speaking of minutes, Bernardo Silva, as I said, the difference this year is that he looks like he's favoured in Pep's starting 11. And Pep is rotating significantly less in the Premier League. I think he started 8 or 9 games. He's played 90 minutes in a row now, Bernardo Silva. And I think he started all but 1 game this season. So he is nailed in that Pep team. And even with the difficult fixture coming up, Bernardo Silva is that kind of guy. He doesn't need much time to recover. Great fitness, great stamina. And the Champions League fixtures do die down slightly when the Premier League kicks up. So I would say that Bernardo Silva will play 90-95% of minutes. And that's pretty good for a City attacker with good fixtures in a busy period. Diogo Jota is probably fairly nailed at the moment for different reasons. Firmino is still out injured. He could be back sooner than we expected. But then you've got AFCON when Salah and Mane will go away. So we could potentially see a now Diogo Jota again until about end of January, beginning of February. So these two players, for different reasons, could be fairly nailed at a cheap price, playing in attacking positions for the two best teams in the league. So I like both of them for those reasons. You can see projected points-wise, because Jota has picked up a slight niggle, at the moment, he hasn't got any projected points. And obviously, if by the time this goes live, I do apologise if Diogo Jota's confirmed out. But as far as I can see, it doesn't look like a major injury. So we'll go off the basis that he'll be ready for this weekend. If he's not, then you've got an easy decision. You can bring in Bernardo Silva, Foden, someone like that, maybe stretch to Son or Mane. But for the time being, I don't know that he's out. So as you can see, the projected points is NA. What I would say is that before he was injured, it was around 35, 36 projected points over the next 6 game weeks. So if he is fit, Diogo Jota is projected to get more points over the next 6 than Bernardo Silva. Expected FPL points wise, Diogo Jota is definitely out on top. Over 1 point more expected FPL points per 90 over the first 12 game weeks. Non-penalty expected goals and expected assists, Diogo Jota just continues to improve. 0.84. He's approaching 1 expected FPL return per game, which is mind-blowing. One of the best in the league. Puts him up there with the likes of Salah, Mane, Antonio, Ronaldo. Puts him above Ronaldo. He really, really is in an elite bracket, playing up top for Liverpool at 7.5 million. We've said it before, Diogo Jota's underlying stats are so good. Interestingly, though, Bernardo Silva's are really good, and this is what I'm saying about changing up the way we think. 0.55 for Bernardo Silva is really, really highly impressive. He's making a lot of forward runs. He's picking up the ball. He's shooting a little bit more than he used to. And that must be a clear instruction from Pep, because we know Pep's system is so well drilled. He wouldn't be doing things that Pep wasn't asking. So he's clearly asking a little bit more from Bernardo to attack a little bit more. And that is coming up in the underlying statistics. And 0.55 is approaching the level of Foden. And it is really, really highly impressive, especially considering he is playing 90 minutes a lot of the time. Big chances, there is a scary difference between the two, though. 1.07 big chances per 90 for Diogo Jota, which is wild. He's getting a big chance every 90 minutes. Only 0.38 for Bernardo Silva. So while Silva's stats are pretty good, he's taking a lot of sort of low XG shots, and that's sort of building it up, and he's got quite high creativity. Whereas a lot of Jota's is made from clear-cut opportunities. Those brilliant heading opportunities he gets, those one-on-one positions. So that is worth taking into account, that is sort of what you would want. You definitely want your player to be getting a lot more big chances than sort of low XG shots off and from creativity. Touches in the box, they're fairly similar. And as I said with the Cornet and Gallagher section, this is more what you're looking for. Almost 6 touches in the box for both. Once again, Jota does come out on top. If you take a look at the touch maps, both of them, as we know, we can see in the stats, are getting into the box. Bernardo Silva gets a lot of his action in and around the edges of the box, so on the far left and on the far right. He's definitely playing more on that left side, though, when he gets into the box, which is interesting because often he plays on sort of the right central midfield position. But a lot of the time when he's getting into the box, it's on that left-hand side, whereas a lot of Jotas are dead central. And once again, much more likely to get those big chances and those high XG opportunities if you're in the centre. So Diogo Jota's stats are obviously better. You can see that with your own eyes. But what I would say is that Bernardo Silva's are really good. So if you're looking for a different option to Jota, or if Jota's injured, or if you already own Jota, I do really like Bernardo Silva, and I suppose that's what I'm trying to draw your attention to, because I'm not going to sit here and tell you Bernardo Silva is a better option than Jota, because the fixtures are good for Liverpool. Liverpool are the best attack in the league, and Jota has some of the best underlying stats in the league. I just wanted to introduce Bernardo Silva back into your thinking and just let you know that try your best not to focus too much on past seasons. When someone is performing in a different role and they're performing really well, sometimes we just have to say there has been a clear change in system and a change in instructions for that player. So let me know, are you interested in Bernardo Silva, or would you still prefer Foden? Do you already have Jota? I'm looking to bring in Jota this week, potentially, because looking at those stats, looking at the fact that if Firmino is still out, he will be fairly nailed. Then you've got AFCON coming up. I think Diogo Jota could be an absolute blessing. Let's hope he's fit. So the final comparison is between the two Wolves attackers, Raul Jimenez and Hwang. So this is a fairly short-term move, and I'm not necessarily saying that you should do this, but I know a lot of people are looking to target the next 2 fixtures because, my word, they are basically perfect to attack from an attacking perspective and bringing an attacker from these teams, because the fixtures are Norwich away and Burnley at home. If that was Norwich at home and Burnley at home, you could argue that they are the best 2 fixtures to target. We've seen both of these teams leaking a lot of goals recently. Burnley were defending slightly well, but then they conceded another 3 goals at the weekend. So both of these teams, I would say, are frail defensively. And Wolves haven't been terrible from an attacking perspective. They've just failed to take quite a few of their chances. They've been underperforming their XG throughout the entire season. So I definitely understand the desire to target these next 2. And I suppose the point of this is to say, if you are going to target the next 2, do you have to go all the way up to £7.8 million Jimenez? Or can you save £2 million and go for Hwang? Outside of the next 2, I wouldn't necessarily want to hold these guys long term. Liverpool, City, Brighton and Chelsea are the 4 games after those 2. So if you're bringing in one of these guys, you'll probably only bring them in for 2 fixtures. The main or immediate benefit of going for Hwang is that you could bring him in for 13, 14 and then just have him on the bench. Because at 5.8 million, that's sort of what you're looking at as like a nice bench option. You don't necessarily need to sell him after that. So I guess that's one benefit. However, the benefit of going for like a Raul Jimenez is that in game week 15, you could sell him for a Watkins because Villa's fixtures start to turn. So they're your 2 options straight away from a price perspective. You bring in Hee-Chan Hwang, then you keep him on your bench because he's a cheap price. Or you can bring in Jimenez now, and then you can sell him for like an Aston Villa attacker, or potentially you just wait in a couple more weeks and then go for Antonio from around game week 17, game week 18, when West Ham's fixtures start to become really, really nice. So they're the 2 options from a price perspective. If we take a look at the underlying statistics, it is sort of what you would expect and hope in that the player that you are spending more money on does have the better underlying stats. And Raul Jimenez, in basically every stat that I looked at, was coming out on top. And that's interesting because if you looked 5 or 6 weeks ago when Hwang first came into the league, of course it was a small sample size, Hwang was massively outperforming Jimenez. And we were saying it's definitely not worth spending the extra money on Hwang. But after he's had a few more games, after Jimenez has started to find his feet, the stats are slightly better for Jimenez now. What I would say is that neither of them are particularly impressive. So whilst Jimenez's are better, I'm not blown away by Jimenez's by any means. Projected points over the next 6 game weeks, again, neither of them particularly high. Jimenez expected to get almost 4 extra points over the next 6 game weeks, which might not sound like a lot, but of course that is quite a lot in projected terms because it projects a sort of average. So that is still quite a lot. Expected FPL points are almost identical between the 2 per 90, so 4.63 for Jimenez, 4.48 for Hwang. So yes, Jimenez is coming out on top, but not by much. Expected goal involvement, 0.47 for Jimenez. Again, that's not that impressive for me. I would expect significantly more from a player of that price. If you think Antonio's is pushing like 0.8, 0.9 across the season, that's really what you're hoping for from a player of that sort of price range. 0.37 for Hwang is very, very disappointing, especially, as I said, 5 or 6 game weeks ago, it was almost like 0.7, 0.8 for Hwang. So he's definitely dropped off in the past few game weeks, which would suggest over the past few, he's been getting very, very limited chances to get FPL points. Big chances wise, fairly similar. They're both getting a big chance every 2 games-ish. Jimenez coming out on top at 0.64 versus Hwang 0.52. And then touches in the box. Once again, Jimenez getting almost an extra touch and a half, or just over a touch and a half in the box extra on top of Hwang every 90 minutes. All of that together, I would say definitely favours Jimenez. Jimenez is nailed for 90 minutes almost every game, whereas Hwang is prone to an early sub. He could potentially be rotated in the busy period. I reckon he'll be okay for the next 2 game weeks, but we never know that. And of course, Jimenez is on penalties as well. So this definitely favours Jimenez. Better stats on penalties, more nailed. But it doesn't blow Hwang out the water. And if you can use that extra 2 million for something else, or you've just got a team structure, perhaps you've got someone like Adam Armstrong and you just don't have the money to go elsewhere and you just say, you know what, I just want to bring in a cheaper player for the next 2 game weeks and target those fixtures, I don't mind Hee-Chan Hwang. If Hwang plays the next 2, I think they will have a very similar output based on the stats. It just, Jimenez isn't coming out that much on top. However, the risk is early subs. The risk is potential rotation in that team, especially considering the fact that these will be seen as 2 easier fixtures ready for this busy period. Hwang might get a rest against Norwich or Burnley. So a lot of hypothesizing, but the stats aren't that different. I guess for me, it would depend again on your team structure and what you really want to do with that striking spot. If you want a 2-week bump before you go for Watkins, or a 2 or 3 week pump before you go back to Antonio, then I like Jimenez. If you just want a cheaper option, you go for Hwang. Let me know down below. You might already own Jimenez. Jimenez obviously got quite decent ownership. Same with Hwang as well. So do you own either of these already? If so, you're in a great position. If not, are you looking to bring them in? I've got Armstrong in my team, so I could potentially make a cheeky switch from Armstrong to Hwang just for 2 weeks and then look to move him on after that. I think they're both great options, and I think they'll both score very well against Norwich and Burnley. So guys, just to finish off, something slightly different. For those of you that just wanted to find out my top transfer targets, that section has ended. I just wanted to show you guys where you can find some of these stats, because I know a lot of you love the videos, you like the style of analysis. I'd like to just show you how you can do that for yourselves if you need to. Obviously, these videos will come every week. We still have the price change videos as well. We'll still try and bring you as much creative content as possible. However, it is nice to be able to check these things for yourself rather than relying on other people. So I'm on the Fantasy Football Fix website, of course, which is fantasyfootballfix.com. We've also got an app as well, so you can download that completely free and you can enable push notifications, all that good stuff. But I just wanted to show you the few sections that I love using, that I use to make these videos, so that if you need to find out stuff for yourself, you can do that absolutely. So you can see at the top here, you won't be able to see my mouse, but all of these sections, there's so many different things. You could spend hours on here doing your research, but I just wanted to draw your attention to the few things that I use. So the first thing that I use is the fixture analyzer. So you remember the fixtures at the top, you can click on that. If you go to that section, I know my camera will be blocking some of this. You've got straight away, you've got the game week range, and then you've got how they the sort of color schemes that you know what you're looking at. What is a really nice thing that they allow you to do is look by defense or attack, which completely switches it, because defense is based on the attacking capabilities of the team they're playing against, and attack is based on the defensive capabilities of the team they're playing against. So it completely changes, and then it orders it based on that. So from an attacking perspective, Leicester actually have some of the best fixtures over the next 6 game weeks. From a defensive perspective, you can see Leicester are actually down at around 5th. So it completely switches it. So that's the first thing I use, is this fixture difficulty analyzer. And like I said, so as you can see here, if we go based on attack, Leicester are top over the next 6 game weeks. If you switch that just slightly and made it a little bit longer term, you can see Leicester are nowhere to be seen now. They dropped down massively. Everton now. So it depends on what range you want to look at. Perhaps you just want to target the next 3 games. So that's the first thing I use, and I find that really, really difficult. The next thing is predicted points and stats, which is projected points over the next few game weeks. You can sort it by overall over a specific set of games. You can look at your projected points, which is your team, or you can just search for specific players. You can sort it by game week. There are so many different things you can do here. And sometimes if I'm struggling with a benching decision and I just want to take it out of my hands, you can just use the projected points, look who's projected to get the most points, and then you've almost just trusted the data then and taken the decision out of your hands. And I think that's a really nice way as well. And obviously in these videos, you see I always show the projected points. The next thing I use absolutely tons, this is my favorite section to use. I'm really big on like player touch maps and player heat maps. Is this section, if you go on fixed stats, the top 1 player heat maps, straight away, these are the things that I screenshot in the picture in these videos. You can see a screenshot of them all the time. So you select your player, so you click on select player to compare a second player. So you might want to look at Salah versus Mane. So you can see straight away that's what we do here. But it's not just touch maps they've got absolutely tons. So you can see touch maps there, but you might also want to take a look at, well, where are they taking their shots from? So you can see straight away, this is where Salah and Mane are taking their shots from. If you hover over it, you can see the expected XG from that point, the XG from that shot. You can see who assisted it. You can see what the outcome was it saved, scored, etc. You've also got attempted assists. You can see their creativity. So straight away, you can see Salah is significantly more creative than Mane. You've got average position as well. So you can see where they are. You can see Salah is slightly more advanced than Mane. You've got so many different things. What else is there? That's probably it for those two. You can see literally raw touches. Salah obviously getting more touches than Mane, gets a little bit more involved. So this is the second thing that I use, as well as the touch maps. If you just scroll down, you've got some different stats there. And then also you can take a direct comparison between the two. Average statistic per 90 minutes. You can see that Salah comes out on top on every single one over Sadio Mane, which shows that he really is the GOAT of FPL at the moment. But that's the second page. This is probably the page that I use maybe second most on the FPL, on the Fantasy Football Fix site, is this one here. And then the final thing that I use absolutely tons, you've got different ways to compare the statistics here. So different people prefer different things. I love the Opta stat sandbox. It's just really simple to use. You've got different things you can sort out here based on defense, midfield, attack, etc., the game week range. But I just leave it as the entire season so far, all the players. And then you can just sort it by so many different things. You've got key, goal threat, creativity, involvement, expected. I will take a look at different things. So for goal threat, I like to look at big chances. So you can see Salah has had 14 big chances across the season. You can sort that per 90 minutes or per game. I tend to do per 90 for the videos that I create for you guys. So you can see big chances per 90. Noble will come out on top because he's only played 3 minutes, right? And it was a penalty, I think he came off those 3 minutes. So what you can do is you can just sort it by have to play a minimum of 180 minutes, just so that weeds out the sort of players that haven't played many. And you can see someone like Calvert-Lewin, Cavani, if they were getting more minutes, they're getting a lot of big chances. You can then take a look at involvement and look at touches in the box. Straight away, we know Salah is the absolute GOAT, getting 9.75 touches in the box per 90. So there are so many different things you can look at here. The things that I present in the videos for you guys is expected FPL points per 90 is a great one. So you can sort by that. You can see Reece James comes out on top for expected FPL points per 90. You've got expected goals, non-penalty. So Firmino's coming out on top. Torres, if he ever gets any minutes again once his injuries recovered. Mahrez, Cavani, etc. And you've got expected assists is another one I really like to take a look at. So you can see Podence, Trent, Ziyech, Elise. There are a lot of players that you potentially wouldn't expect to see on there. Rodriguez of Burnley. So you can sort it like that. And this is the other thing I use. This is where you can get all of your underlying statistics. It does take a while to get to know which statistics you want to look at, but you can see the ones that I use. Big chances, touches in the box, expected FPL points, expected goals, and expected assists. I think are some really nice basic ones to look at. And like I said, you can sort it by different ranges. So if you just wanted to look at game week 12 only, if you just give it, oh, sorry, stats aren't in for that one yet. That's fine. So game week 11 onwards. So if you just want to look at more recent games, you can absolutely do that. It is coming in. That's a very strange one. Oh, that's why. Because that is set 180 minutes. Let's go back then. So if you just want to take a look at game week 12, of course, and go, you can just go total because it was only one game week anyway. So who had the highest XG non-pen in game week 12? It was Josh King at 1.37. Diogo Jota, who was on our watch list today, 0.93. So you can take a look at just the most recent week if you're very interested in how the team performed in that week. And then the final thing I'll just show you is if you can see in that top left, I had a couple of questions about where you find your team stats. In that top left, is you just click toggle player/team level, you can then see the team stats. So you can see XG for the team. Just in game week 12, Liverpool accrued an XG of 3.59. So again, if you just look across the season, you know I kept saying Liverpool have the best attack in the league. They do. If you look by XG, if you take a look at how many shots on target they've had, Liverpool come out on top. Shots in the box, Liverpool come out on top. Big chances, Liverpool come out on top. So again, you can take a look at the team stats as well as the individual stats. And I spend a lot of time on this part of the site, just taking a look, doing the research for these videos. So I guess the point was just to show you that you can find all the stuff that I'm presenting in these videos, and don't be afraid of the site. Yes, there is a lot you can do, but there are also a few basics that you can rely on. And whilst I use pretty much every part of this site, Opta Stat Sandbox, the player heat maps, fixture analyzer, and the points predictions, the main thing that I use for myself and also for these videos. And if you do that, hopefully it will take your game to the next level. And yeah, you can make the most of the Fantasy Football Fix website as well. So guys, there you have it. Those are my top transfer targets ahead of game week 13, as well as a little bit of a tutorial, I suppose, of how I'd get these stats and get these figures and graphics, etc. for the Fantasy Football Fix videos on this channel. If you are enjoying the content here on this channel, please do remember to like, comment, and subscribe. We appreciate the support so much, and we just enjoy bringing you as much quality content as we possibly can. And until next time, guys, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Catch you soon. Bye-bye.